There was a poet in India named Kalidasa. He is the greatest writer in the Sanskrit language, and we do not know when he lived. No birth date, no death date, no letters, no portrait, no account of his life that anyone trusts. 7 works survive. That is the whole file. His name means servant of Kali. Tradition seats him at the court of a king called Vikramaditya as one of 9 jewels of that court. There is a story, certainly untrue, that he began as a cowherd so stupid he was found sawing through the branch he was sitting on. Tricked into marrying a princess who then despised him, he went to the goddess in the night and came back with language. What we actually have is the writing. 3 plays, 2 epics, and the Meghaduta, in which a banished spirit stops a passing cloud. He asks it to carry a message home to his wife. The poem is the directions. It is the most beautiful travel writing in any language. In 1789, William Jones translated his play Shakuntala into English, and Europe lost its head. Goethe wrote a verse in its praise, but Shakuntala came later. Before any of it, there was a small play by a man nobody had heard of, and the play knows it. It opens with a stage manager facing a crowd who want the old masters. Boss, Sawmill Kaviputra, proven names, safe evenings, and he tells them, a thing is not good because it is old or bad because it is new. Judge it yourselves. The play is Malavikagnimitram. Malavika and Agnimitra. No gods in it, no miracles. A palace, 2 queens, a jester, and a girl carrying water. One quick thing before we begin. If you enjoy stories told properly and at length, subscribe to the channel. That is genuinely all it takes to keep them coming. Now, Vidisha, 2200 years ago. Vidisha was real. A rich city on the trade roads of central India, ruled for the Shung Emperor Pushyamitra by his son Agnimitra. Agnimitra had a province to run, an army to keep fed, a grown son away on campaign, and 2 wives who were not friends. Dharini was the chief queen, older than him, cleverer than him, and in total command of the inner palace. Nothing happened in those rooms without her knowledge. Almost nothing. Iravati was the second wife, younger, faster, prouder, and entirely dependent on her husband's attention, which is an exhausting way to live. Act 1 does not begin with the king. It begins with his friend Gautam, moving fast down a corridor on an errand he is enjoying far too much. Gautam was the Vidushak, the court jester. Round, greedy, cheerful, a Brahmin by birth and licensed to insult the prince to his face. He used the license daily, and the prince let him, because they had been friends since before either of them mattered. The errand was a girl in a painting. Weeks earlier, the court painter had delivered a portrait of Queen Dharini among her attendants. Agnimitra unwrapped it, looked at his wife for a second and stopped. At the edge of the picture, half behind the others, stood a young woman he had never seen in his life. He asked who she was. Dharini said nothing at all, which is how he learned there was something in his own house to find. Her name was Malavika. She had arrived months before in a group of young women sent up from the frontier by the queen's brother. Dharini had taken one look at her and made a decision. Not this one, inner rooms only. No errands anywhere the prince might walk. And to keep her occupied, the queen handed her to Gandas, the senior dance master, which is exactly where the plan came apart. Because Gautam, hunting for any excuse to get the girl into open court, found one standing in the dance school with a grey beard. There were 2 masters in that palace, Gandas, who taught Malavika, and Hardat, who did not and who minded very much. Gautam had only to mention to each of them sympathetically in confidence that the other one considered himself the better teacher. By that evening, the two old men were shouting at each other in front of the entire court, and neither could stop without disgrace. Agnimitra heard them out with tremendous gravity. A dispute of this importance, he ruled, could only be settled by demonstration. Their best pupils in public. Dharani objected before he had finished speaking. This was a squabble between servants. It did not require the queen's household paraded in front of the court, but there was already a judge living at that court. Kaushiki was a wandering ascetic, shaven-headed in plain ochre and the most learned person in the building. On a question of art, nobody in Vidisha would argue with her, and Kaushiki said the obvious thing in the fewest possible words. A quarrel about teaching can only be settled by looking at what has been taught. Dharani had nothing left to say. Act 2. They gathered in the concert hall. Drummers settled. Lamps were lit against the afternoon. Dharani sat down very straight and did not move. Agnimitra took the judge's seat with Kaushiki beside him. Gandas went first. He always would have gone first. That was the whole point. Malavika came out with her feet stained red with lac and bronze bells at her ankles, and the room stopped talking. She danced a piece in 4 movements and sang while she danced. The song was about a woman in love with a man she has no business loving. The prince took it personally. It is not obvious he was wrong too. Once in the 4th movement, she looked straight at him and kept dancing. Kaushiki gave her verdict the moment it ended. Faultless. Gandas had proved his case, and Hadata bowed and said nothing at all. Then Gautam, sensing the room about to empty, began inventing urgent reasons for Malavika to stay in the hall. He got as far as the 2nd one. Dharani stood up, closed the assembly, and took the girl out with her. It made no difference. Everybody there had seen it happen. The prince had seen her, she had seen him, and the chief queen of Vidisha now had the problem inside her own rooms. Act 3 opens in the garden with 2 maids gossiping, which is how you learn the prince has stopped eating, stopped sleeping, and stopped hiding it. In that garden stood an ashoka tree that had not flowered in living memory. There was an old belief about trees like that. It was called dohad, a tree's craving. Certain trees, people said, will not flower until they are given one particular thing. The thing is always human. The buckle wants wine from a woman's mouth. The kurbak wants to be embraced. And the ashok wants a woman to kick it. Not hard. A touch. From a foot painted with lach and ringed with bells. By custom, the chief queen performs the rite, and Dharani fully intended to. Then she came off a garden swing and turned her ankle. She could not stand on it. So she sent for Malavika. "Do this for me," she said. "And if the tree flowers inside 5 nights, you may ask me afterwards for anything you want." She had no idea what she had just offered. Bakul Avlika, the one friend Malavika had among the maids, painted her feet and tied on the bells. Then she left her alone in the garden at dusk. And alone, Malavika finally said out loud the thing she had said to nobody. That she was in love with a man she could not have, and that she knew exactly how foolish it was, and that it made no difference. 15 feet away in the bushes, Agnimitra and Gautam had been crouched down, since well before she arrived, and their legs had gone to sleep. The prince came out, and for the first time, and very nearly the last, the two of them spoke honestly to one another. Iravati was also in that garden. She had come out looking for her husband, with her maid Nipunika, in a good mood and a little drunk. She came round a hedge and found him holding a maidservant's hand under a tree. What followed was not dignified. Agnimitra tried charm. Then he tried apology. Then he lay down on the ground at her feet, which was the moment Gautam chose to attempt a lie. It was such a poor lie that nobody in the garden bothered to answer it. Iravati looked at her husband on the ground. She told him precisely what she thought of him at length. Then she straightened her sari and went to find the chief queen. Act 4. Dharini did not warn people. By the time Agnimitra heard anything about any of it, the thing was already finished. Malavika and Bakulavlika had been taken down into a cellar under the palace and locked in, with a guard on the door. The order left no room in it. Nobody comes out, not for the prince, not for anyone, unless they are holding the queen's own signet ring. The ring had a coiled serpent cut into it, and it never left her hand, which made this a difficult problem, but a very specific one. And specific problems were what Gautam was for. He went up to the queen's apartments and threw himself full length onto the floor. He was screaming. He was clutching his right hand. He was rolling from side to side and calling on the gods individually by name. He had been picking flowers, he explained, between howls for the prince's morning worship. A snake had come out of the creeper. It bit his thumb. The physician was waiting. He sobbed, but the treatment needed one object the physician did not have: a ring with a serpent on it. Pressed to the wound, it draws the poison out. Everybody knows this. Would the queen be quick, as he was going to die on her floor? Dharini pulled the ring off her finger and put it into his hand. Gautam stopped crying. He stood up. He walked out of the room, went down the stairs, showed the ring to the guard, and had both women out of the cellar inside a minute. He put Malavika and the prince together in a pavilion by the water garden, and he stood at the door to keep watch. He kept watch badly. Iravati was through the curtain within minutes. This time there was nothing to say, and for once nobody tried to say it. They were rescued by a 6-year-old. A maid ran in shouting that the little princess Vasulakshmi had been frightened by a monkey and was screaming. Iravati was fond of the child. Iravati went, and into the space she left, a gardener arrived at a dead run from the far grounds. The ashoka had flowered inside the 5 nights, which meant Dharini owed somebody a promise, and whatever else she was, Dharini kept her word. Act 5. The tree had opened all at once. The garden was crimson from one wall to the other, and the entire court walked out to see it. Dharini sent for Malavika to name her reward, and Kaushiki, who had watched 4 acts of this in silence, chose that moment to speak. "Let the girl ask for what she actually wants," she said. Dharini was not slow. She understood exactly what was being asked, and she stopped. And while she stood there, deciding, the world outside the palace arrived. 2 messengers, minutes apart from opposite ends of the empire. The first came from the emperor. Pushyamitra had released a horse for the Ashwamedh, the old sacrifice that measures a kingdom by where its horse can walk. The animal wanders loose for a year. Every land it enters submits, or fights the escort riding behind it. At the end of the year, it is killed. On the bank of the Sindhu, Greek cavalry rode the horse down and took it. The escort commander was Vasumitra, Agnimitra's son. He fought them, beat them, brought the horse back, and his grandfather was now calling the whole family north to the sacrifice. None of that is invented. It is one of the few things we know about the Shung wars, and it is here in a comedy about a jealous wife. The second messenger came from the west. The army of Vidisha had broken Yigsen, who had seized the throne of Vidarbha. The kingdom was open, and with that message came the prisoners he had been holding. freed and sent on. Two were women who had served in the Vidarbha royal household. They walked into the throne hall, looked across it, saw the maidservant standing quietly behind Queen Dharini, and went down on their knees on the floor. And Kaushiki finally said the thing she had been carrying since the day she walked into that palace. The maid was not a maid. She was Malavika, princess of Vidarbha. Her brother was Madhavasen, the prince the army had just let out of Yangsen's prison, and he had not sent her to Vidisha. He had been bringing her himself. He was bringing her to marry Agnimitra. That was the entire purpose of the journey. An alliance between two kingdoms sealed the ordinary way by a wedding. Yagsen, their own cousin, ambushed the party on the road and took the prince. A minister called Sumati got the girl away in disguise and kept moving. Kaushiki was Sumati's sister. She went with them. At the frontier, they were caught a second time by Veer Sen, who was Queen Dharini's brother. Sumati was killed there. The women were sent up to the palace as household staff. So, the bride had arrived after all. She had been in the building the whole time, carrying water, and the queen had spent months hiding her from the man she was sent to marry. There was nothing left to argue about. Dharini kept the promise she had made under that tree, and she kept it properly in front of everyone. She put the bridal veil on Malavika with her own hands and gave her to her husband. It cost her something. She did it anyway. Eravati sent word that she would not stand in the way. That is not forgiveness. It was formally delivered and formally accepted, and it was enough. Agnimitra settled Vidarbha the way an administrator settles things. He cut the kingdom in half along the river Vada, one side to Yagsen, the other to Madhavasen. Both cousins lived, both ruled, and the thing between them became a border instead of a war. Malavika was married and made a queen. Gautam took full credit for all of it and spent the rest of the day showing people his thumb. And the play ends the way they all end. The king stands up and asks out loud that the land be fed and its people spared. That was the first one. He would write better. He would write Shakuntala and the Meghaduta and be read in languages that did not yet exist. But he never wrote anything again quite this quick on its feet, or this fond of every single person in it. Tell me which play you want next. Subscribe if you would like to hear it. Thank you for listening.